One Sunday night when I was a little girl, I was nestled up under my daddy's arm, listening to an old gentleman named Mr. Scott, who drove a cattle truck across country for most of his life, describe a gentleman that he knew, and he was giving him utmost compliment by saying, you can find a fellow with good horse sense. You can find a fellow with good book sense, but it's a rare treasure to find a fellow who has both. As we're looking at the book of Proverbs, I can't help but think about Mr. Scott, especially in chapter 6, where the first 15 verses warn us against folly. You could define folly as foolishness, or maybe even, in Mr. Scott's terms, a lack of good horse sense. It covers life issues such as entering into foolish contracts, being foolishly lazy, or being deceived by a scoundrel who is a foolish pot stirrer and causing dissension. In verses 20 through 29, we're given a long list of things to safeguard our marriages by. Guys, it's a list of things that we've got to put into place and to watch and guard against, lest we fall into a path of adultery. That this text really doesn't even just describe the consequences as a possibility, but a list of consequences as promises that will happen if we choose to not heed the warnings found here. And then, in the middle of chapter 6, there's this very sobering list. It's a list of 7 things that God hates. It's things he finds detestable. For God to love as completely, as perfectly as he does, there are actions that we take. We turn our back on his wisdom, we turn our back on his light and on his love, and God abhors it. The chapter, like many within the book of Proverbs, seems to be a collection of good, sound, godly advice. But as I read the chapter a second, third, and fourth time, some words started leaping off the pages to me. I'd like for you to listen and see if you see the pattern as well. I read words like, allow no sleep, open your eyes, awake, don't sleep, get up if you sleep, when you awake, if he sleeps. All are calling us to heed the danger of sleeping on the enemy and allowing him to come in that small, tiny crack in the door, just that little opening in the window in the back of our hearts that'll lead us down a path of sin, away from the wisdom of God. At the beginning of the pandemic, there was so much talk of how sweet that time was, where all distractions were taken away, the busyness of life, we were forced to slow down. As it went on, we started dreaming of the days that we would be able to reunite with our loved ones, be in gatherings again, worship together in the house of the Lord again. Now we're in a place, as it's worn on from weeks into months, that I'm wondering if we're starting to become a little numb, that this lack of interaction with others has caused us to stop thinking about lives outside our own walls. Maybe we're not thinking about the hurting as often because we're not interacting with them each day. Maybe we've become accustomed to staying at home and doing life through a screen, doing our lives online. For some, that's a choice. For some, it's not. For some, it is for the very safety and well-being of themselves, for your families, and I am not speaking to that at all. What I am speaking to is that for some of us, myself included, it's become easy. And with easy, I fear that maybe some, like me, have been somewhat lulled to sleep. And there, I'm going to find myself in the warnings of Proverbs 6. Ephesians 5:14 says, "Wake up, O sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. While there's not 100% consensus, the majority of evangelical writers agree that Paul's call to awake, O sleeper, is not a call to the spiritually dead, but in actuality, it's a call to arise to believers who have fallen asleep and lapsed into some deeds of darkness. The book of Proverbs calls us to view the Lord with the respect that he so deserves. And Proverbs 6 gives meaning to our lives, that we live in light as we know him and depend on him and trust him with an humble trust that his wisdom is so much greater than ours. Proverbs 6, verse 20. My son, keep your father's commandments and do not forsake your mother's teachings. Bind them in your heart forever. Tie them and fasten them around your neck. When you walk, they will guide you. When you sleep, they will watch over you. And when you wake, they will speak to you. For these commands are a lamp. This teaching is a light. And the corrections of discipline are the way of life. Let's wake up, my friends. Let's step into the light.